I've had a particular video lingering in the back of my mind for a little while after watching it. It's one from a few weeks back when I first saw it, and it contains a handful of Arkham fan theories. At the time, I considered putting together a response, because I don't think it did as much justice as the topic deserved, but I had sort of started to move on to other things just through the natural process of deliberation. But then, some jagoff popped up in the comments on my briefish history of Arkham City video and declared I was incorrect and a dumbass because I didn't even consider one of these fan theories, even though there is literally zero textual evidence in the game for the theory he was suckling at. And I pretty explicitly try to engage with textual evidence in these videos, and also always on my stuff. It's what I do. I think about what the game has actually shown me, and then I talk about it for 40 minutes, give or take. I don't usually delete comments, and I even tried to discuss it by replying to him for a good faith discussion, but instead of that, he doubled down on the petty insults and reiterated his lack of media comprehension. So I got rid of his malarkey. We'll get into specifics later, at the relevant point. So getting rubbed the wrong way like that finally broke me down, and I am revisiting my response idea. If you're curious, it is a video by Nerd, spelled with a K at the start, and I've linked it in the description so you can assess that I'm not misrepresenting his statements. Please be respectful if you do go his way. I'm not looking to beef with him. The whole reason I clicked on that video is because I had watched a couple of his other videos that are actually quite good, and I felt this one just wasn't up to par with those. I'll link those too. One was about hidden gameplay mechanics in the Arkham series, which I even learned a couple of things from, and in another, he and someone assisting him looked at all the details they could find in-game to reconstruct as much of a Victor Zsasz side mission that ended up getting cut from Arkham Knight, which was extremely cool to see. I've not seen any other of his videos, but honestly, 2 genuinely solid videos compared to one that was a mixed bag is great. That's a good track record. Also, he has more than 10 times the subscriber count that I do. So I would absolutely lose that fight if you try to start beef. Please don't do it. I am begging you. He seems like he's probably a very nice fella. So, Nerd's video is 10 Arkham fan theories that will blow your mind. And while some are definitely better than others, I think a lot of these really highlight the issues I often take with fan theories, especially the way they are presented online. Again, in Nerd's defense, please don't beef. I genuinely think he made the video from a more casual, laid-back, not being overly serious kind of place anyway. Maybe he just generally thought these were neat to think about, and made it for funsies. Or maybe he just knew he was catering to his target audience for the views. Both are valid reasons for someone to make a video, and even if it was purely inspired to rack up ad revenue, that's still fine. If I knew how to get 600,000 views on my next video, I'd go for it too. I got bills to pay, I got mouths to feed. There ain't nothing in this world for free. And I'm not exactly doing YouTube for a living here. I do all the work on this channel because I like doing it, in addition to having to work a normal 9 to 5 to make ends meet. I've waffled enough. I'll get into things, skipping his intro just to get into the meat and potatoes of it all. Obviously, spoilers for the Arkham games. Like, big spoilers for the Arkham games. Fan theories obviously like to focus on the big twists or the crazy endings, after all. If you are still blind to what happens in this series, at this point in the video, seriously, pause and go play them. They are worth experiencing as blind as you can be beforehand. You can just leave the video sitting here paused for like a couple of weeks on its own little tab. It's fine. Anyway, theory 1 is the bad blood theory. Coincidentally, also the one that the jagoff in my comments went to war for. That was efficient. This theory is one that developed because of the weird timeline that develops from Titan poisoning in Arkham City. Joker has it for like a year, Batman has it for less than 1 total night, and some Gotham civilians off-screen have it for an intermediary amount of time. And somehow, they are all due to die roughly by the following morning. This is a pretty big consideration, and one that I spent some in-depth consideration of there. Do we have a clip? Hello? Editor Charlie? Shit. Guess you'll just have to watch that if you're interested. I got lazy in the editing room again. The fan theory goes like this. Batman is actually dying from an incompatible blood transfusion, not the Titan toxin. There are several glaring issues with this. The most crucial one is this little thing called the blatant text of the narrative. I understand how, sometimes, when a writer makes something subtextual, some of the audience members may miss the deeper point. Looking at certain Watchmen readers here. This is not even that. This is willfully ignoring what Arkham City is blatantly stating. It is unambiguous that the game has him dying, specifically from having toxin in his blood. That's why the Gotham Hospital patients who got Joker's transfusions are also dying. There has to be a lethal blood-carried toxin that is, for some reason, killing people by tomorrow. The hospitals know what blood type they are giving their patients, so to play devil's advocate, if the blood types were simply mislabeled by Joker, which would only work as a post hoc defense to try and make this theory stand, mind you, the game never says this happened, the hospitals would have already seen the effects of bad blood transfusions. So we can verifiably prove the toxin is killing people. Also, Joker just has it, so the toxin is killing people. However, Nerd isn't even trying to deny the toxin. So, at best, this theory is redundant and has to take a back seat to the game's actual textual details. Since you cannot avoid having the blood toxin inside the Batman, he added in a secondary reason for him to die separate from the first reason that has already been established for him to die. But that's sloppy writing. Imagine doing this with anything else. Of Mice and Men fan theory, Lenny actually died of a fatal stroke in the moments before the bullet turned his brain into a smoothie. You see how that does not actually help the story? Further in, Nerd even tries to explain it as, well, Raish's blood of the demon Lazarus drink cured that issue, and then toxin poisoning is the issue later, which has to be cured, but it just won't kill him as fast. Except no. The game clearly states otherwise. Raish explicitly gave Batman only a weak enough version of Lazarus to buy him a few more hours, so that Batman can complete his tests to take over the League, and get to use the actually stronger Lazarus pit to be healed for realsies. Bad blood or toxin, Batman is still due to die that night. It's an attempt to tie in later story details to give an air of cohesion to the theory, presumably so that the plot of such a beloved game isn't entirely unraveled. But it doesn't actually hold up to scrutiny, and trying to make this work is just making a messier, and again, more narratively unsatisfying experience. And let's be blunt. For this theory to make any sense, multiple characters have to be raging idiots. Total nincompoops. Joker, or someone involved helping send his blood out to the hospitals in secret, has to know about blood types. If they didn't, the plan doesn't work. Since they most likely do not know Batman's blood type, I went ahead and speculated that Joker is a universal donor, as stated in my other video's contemplations, because Joker would be unfathomably dense to get that far into that specific plan without actually considering the fact that Batman could have been killed anticlimactically by a rogue detail. It's not just him either. Batman gives Robin a vial of his own blood to take to Lucius Fox to start working on identifying and curing people with Titan poisoning. If there were stray blood cells of the wrong type mixed in there, or even more obvious, his body's response to said cells, they would have caught it when they started looking at his blood real close. There are two ways to look at an explanation in any story. The Watsonian way is explaining something in-universe, as the characters would, and the Doylist way is explaining things from the perspective of an author working on a fictional world. I love these terms, and I'm greatly ashamed that one time I made a video that accidentally got them backwards, and no one has actually called me out on it. and yet it still haunts me to this day. My attempts to answer this, and the theory's attempts to answer this, are all Watsonian. But let's be blunt, there's a very clear Doyleist answer. These games are all a little medically illiterate. Every one of these shows that the writers don't actually work in medicine in some way or another. I'm working on Origin's upcoming episode right now, and boy howdy, that game doesn't understand defibrillators. This kind of thing doesn't really matter, they're still great stories, but whenever you're dealing with fiction that flubs specialties the writer misunderstood, you just sort of have to grit your teeth and accept this world isn't operating exactly like ours, so long as the writers gave an explanation for how it does work. Which they did. Sure, it's silly that a toxin has a countdown timer to death, but is that any sillier than the fact that Titan thugs' vertebrae are sticking out of their backs? How are they upright after their bones just tore through that much muscle? It doesn't matter. That's just how this world works, and any writer could come along and justify it with sufficient amounts of mumbo-jumbo sci-fi hand-waving. Maybe the toxin keeps degrading at a set pace and only in the most degraded form is it fully lethal. I dunno, and I don't really care. The bad blood theory is just crappy fan fiction that distracts from the fact that Arkham City works because Batman and Joker are dying together, and the cause of death is just the necessary means to get there. The theory adds nothing and detracts too much along the way. Honestly, having gotten that first one out of my system, I'm feeling refreshed. What's next? Theory 2. In Arkham Asylum, Scarecrow used his fear toxin on Killer Croc before Killer Croc's encounter. Alright, this one is much less of an issue, but I still don't buy it, primarily just from conflicting in-game evidence. Under the effects of fear toxin, people have near-total hallucinations, and of course, get scared. Batman has such a trained control over his mind, body, and emotions that he can still function surprisingly effectively through these in this universe, which is probably not something Croc can do, since his powers and abilities are Be Reptile and Be Reptile, respectively. But that alone isn't even what I'll call disproof. Primarily, Croc isn't acting scared, and he is acting lucid, the opposite of both effects of the fear toxin. He occasionally yells cohesive threats, continually tracks Batman's location down, and enacts premeditated ambushes. This is just normal Croc behavior, carried out about as effectively as could be considered, since he's also doing all of this while underwater, and Batman is working to conceal his movements. Croc's not on anything. This theory is an attempt to explain Scarecrow's survival, but I don't think we really need one that badly. If I were in Croc's shoes, wanting to cannibalize Batman, I wouldn't bother mauling Scarecrow for very long. He doesn't look appetizing, and having a new choice in Batman, wasting time with him could let Batman slip away. Weirdly, Nerd starts to set up a more interesting bonus theory as part of this entry, and then for some reason gets weirdly skeptical of something that's actually perfectly reasonable. The bonus theory is that Scarecrow got so badly mauled by Croc, he had to have his mask stitched onto his face that way in Arkham Knight. Which is almost just stating what happened. He did have to have surgical intervention from Croc's attack. His leg's in a brace, his nose and lips are visibly damaged, and his voice is so much deeper he clearly had some throat damage he had to get fixed too. It's not clear in the game if his mask is permanent or just designed to really complement his now fucked up face. But since it's deliberately ambiguous, and there's precedent for Batman villains to have permanent masks infused with their faces, this is actually the most plausible thing so far. It's actually his debunking of this that I have to counter, because his debunk doesn't actually disprove anything. His disproof is that you can find Scarecrow's old mask in City. That's it. That doesn't rule out the painfully obvious answer of just having more than one mask. In fact, there's another old mask in the original style lying around in Arkham Knight, too. So it's rather plausible he did have more than one. Even if he didn't, and he just went and moved that one, why would this keep him from getting a new one to put on his face? The last mask wasn't quite scary enough for Batman, so why not get a slightly spookier alternative? Why was this the part you took umbrage with? Theory 3 is explicitly his own, that the Arkham Knight planned to become the new Batman of some sort once he was finished sieging Gotham as the Arkham Knight and murderizing Batman. I'm actually fine with this theory. Nerd presents in-game evidence and makes a perfectly reasonable claim. At worst, having a second costume persona is just a little redundant when you could keep using the first one. But that would still give several strategic advantages to a dude potentially trying to shoot all the crime in the face later. So it just comes across as being more uber prepared than anything else. This theory holds up to scrutiny. One quick note though, as a script thing. Nerd, you said this at the end.
So basically, Jason was never the bad guy, just someone willing to go to great lengths to get revenge.
The first part is blatantly untrue. He led an army to siege a densely populated civilian area, and even with heavy evacuations, people died. That is, by definition, a bad guy. And any definition of bad guy that excludes actions like this is functionally useless. Yeah, he starts a redemption arc after that stuff, but he's absolutely in the extreme wrong there at first. Come on, man, this was the first theory I could agree with until that one sentence dropped. Theory 4 is that Anarky, from Origins, got killed by Killer Croc. Ignoring a semantics issue stating,
Anarky never showed up in any later Arkham games because he's been dead this whole time,
when the evidence would better imply a relatively recent death. I'm pretty neutral on this theory. It's not an implausible course of events, and the evidence gives enough detail that I can't rule it out as a possible environmental storytelling thing, but it's not enough to assuage all skepticism. The claw marks look more like paint or soot smudges than actual claw damage to the wall, and while Anarky does use the Anarky tags, he neither invented nor has exclusive use of that symbol. That's an easy tag for anyone to place. Besides, in Origins, he tags buildings exactly once to leave details about how capitalism was directly harming or exploiting the working class as related to each building. This theory requires him to want to place a second tag on the same building, which is not his usual modus operandi. Also, he used invisible ink, so only people looking for his tags could find them, and this is clearly normal spray paint. I'm not saying any of it is impossible, but I would need to actually see a little more to believe it for myself. If sufficient extra proof came out, or even confirmation from Rocksteady that this was deliberate, I wouldn't hesitate to retract my hesitations, but I don't think this one has quite enough yet. Still, this one is not terrible, and is certainly justified enough for a semi-casual theory video. Theory 5 is that Ra's al Ghul killed Lady Shiva after Origins, eventually leading to the League of Assassins' civil war in Arkham Knight. I feel like this one is trying to do too much with too little. It's, again, not impossible, not even implausible, and I'd even go so far as to say this could make an interesting story if it were actually something we got to see. But there's just not enough here. There are only two pieces of evidence: Shiva's absence after Origins, and Shiva having Nissa Ratko, one of Raish's daughters and the leader of the Splinter Assassin group fighting Raish in Night, listed as a known associate. Shiva's absence tells us nothing. We have no reason to assume she is dead. Working for an international League of Assassins could simply mean she is operating internationally. Or she got arrested by some other crime fighter. Or she retired because it's easy to get rich fast when you're that good of an assassin. Absence is nothing to go off of. I had a friend growing up named Jeff that I haven't seen in person in well over a decade and a half, and I certainly don't think he went and got dead. Also, Jeff, if you're somehow watching this, I want to apologize for the time you messaged me feeling guilty about losing your virginity to a consenting partner because you were a fundamentalist Christian, and then instead of being a supporting friend, I was a little weird about it because I was a fundamentalist Christian at the time too. Nowadays, I have a much better grasp on ethics without the arbitrary hang-ups first instilled in me at a young age where I lacked critical thinking skills. So, if you decide to lose your virginity a second time, somehow, and feel bad about it afterwards, I'll actually have your back and be a good friend this time. Oh yeah, Shiva. The other evidence is just that she is a known associate of Nissa, which is true. They work for the same secret ninja assassin club. That's it, but apropos of nothing, Nerd starts claiming that they were close friends. We have never seen this version of these characters interact. At all. You could just as easily claim the other associates listed are close friends with Nyssa. You could just as easily claim Snowflame, who gets his power from cocaine, is close friends with Nyssa. It's really easy to fill in the blank when all you have is the blank. Theory 6. Batman was never infected by Joker's personality trying to take over in Arkham Knight. Ah, fuck. Right when I got comfortable, the theories went back to extra shitty again. Remember in the first entry, I talked about muddling the story without adding anything, and having to explicitly ignore the text of the game to make it work? Because those are back with a vengeance. This kind of thing makes me hate fan theories. First off, this one keeps referring to the Joker infection as a mutation, and asserts that, 1, the blood of the demon cocktail would have cured it, which we've already been over why that is explicitly against Arkham City's outright statements about his little sippy sip, and 2, fallaciously stating that taking the Titan cure so early would have stopped it. So, no, for several reasons. Let's establish what it is. It's not a mutation like we typically think of them, it's explicitly a prion disease, like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or mad cow disease. The game even name-drops a similarity to that first one. Prions are these non-living proteins, and if you get one up inside you, it makes the proteins in your brain start folding abnormally, similarly to the prion. Arkham Knight goes so far as to explain this is why Joker became who he is. It's possible he was exposed to something during his chemical bath origin story. In the Arkhamverse, Joker is insane because this specific prion warped his brain without just killing him like real-world prion diseases normally do. The Titan cure is not designed for that. It's designed to get one specific blood toxin out of there. This would be like taking cough medicine to try and cure your depression. While some medicines have more than one use on different ailments, they don't just magically cure whatever's going on in there. This also requires a weird assumption on timing, which is apropos of nothing. Batman takes his cure in the late hours of the night, and Lucius Fox has his copy of the cure out to hospitals sometime in that same time range, possibly a bit later. So this implies the other Joker infectees are actually infected because their unrelated medicine can only also cure prion diseases a couple of hours earlier. This is more medically illiterate than just going with what the game's details say. And again, this adds nothing. Batman is slowly getting Jokerized, and this is just moving the goalposts exclusively to the fear gas he was exposed to, triggering his paranoia. There's a bit where Nerd claims Batman gets worried that only taking half a dose wasn't enough, which is not founded. He has never once shown worrying that. In fact, since Mr. Freeze knows Batman needs it for both himself and Joker, he deliberately destroys one sample to try and coerce Batman to help him. Something I can't see him doing if he knew that one vial wouldn't be enough to save both people. These theories keep asserting things that are purely assumptions as cold, hard facts. Stop that. It is trying to address the question of how Batman willfully overpowers the Jokerization all in his mind's eye, something that does seem impossible against a prion, or a blood mutation as he keeps calling it. But we can engage with that within what the text actually gives us. For example, in Arkham Asylum, he somehow resists the physiological effects of the Titan long enough to give himself the antidote, which seems equally implausible, but sets the precedent that he can somehow do this kind of thing. For 2, he is under the effects of a lot of fear gas by this point. Like, so much. Batman's tolerance is off the charts considering how much he took in Asylum to little long-term impact. Plus, how much he took of the stronger version here in Night. And psychedelic drugs are actually known to improve neuroplasticity after you've taken them. Since he's over here, surviving ungodly amounts of this weaponized hallucinogen, I am perfectly fine letting that be enough of a reason for him to punch his thought palace back to normal. He was so high, his established willpower abilities forced his neurons back to normal thanks to the heightened neuroplasticity of being so goddamn high.
This theory has one major plot hole.
Only one, eh? Do tell.
Batman's green eyes.
Sure, the physiological change people actually comment on. So far, so damning. Nerd tries to say that, under his theory, Batman was only infected for a couple of hours, his words, which is somehow enough to cause a minor physical change, his eyes turning green. Also his words, but not that other stuff attributed to it. And proposes a second option that being exposed to the Titan turned his eyes green, like it did to the people it was used on. Your eyes changing color is not what I'd call a minor thing. Like, that should be one of the most major, final physiological changes, showing the near permanence of this, since his neural pathways are shown changing faster than whatever complex biochemical changes would be needed to alter his eye color. So the first option is built on numerous assumptions of circular reasoning and begging the question. The second option is also conveniently ignoring just how much later this eye color change is hitting. Asylum is somewhere around 2 years, maybe some change, before Night, so it's not justified to claim that Titan exposure is connected to his eyes. That happened in seconds, and only from full exposure, based on what we see. City is less than a year before Night, and that exposure is only to the residual Titan toxin, which is never shown doing jack shit to people's eyes, but that's such a small sample size anyway, it's useless to try and invoke it as the linchpin keeping this theory possible. Finally, Nerd suggests that maybe there's fear gas residue on the bat suit that makes both witnesses simultaneously have identical teensy tiny hallucinations of Batman's eyes turning green. Plastic Man would like to have a word with you. Sorry, that may have been too subtextual. It's because massive stretches are his thing. Theory 7. Batman caused Harley Quinn to miscarry. I've heard this one for years, and actually addressed it in my Harley Quinn's revenge video before I ever saw this one. I'd also love you to check that one out, but I'll be nice and explain it again here. Something happening to the baby is not more likely than a false positive the first time. Formerly Timp Preggers people's hormones don't instantly change back to normal upon having a miscarriage, and will keep testing with positives for a time after. HQR is close enough to the main game that we could easily see at least some of those continue to be positive if she had a bit of shaken fetus syndrome going on. I've never been a fan of this theory, because it just feels like people being edgy for the sake of it. Ooh, the baby died! And it also ignores some rather blatant textual authorial intent. And I mean textual, quite literally. They made the text on the box, in the crib, almost comically, egregiously large to emphasize the possibility of false positives. The only way they could have made it any less subtle is if Scarface the dummy turned to the camera and started explaining how false positives occur with pregnancy tests. I'm gonna let Nerd say Theory 8, for the sake of my blood pressure.
Theory number 8 is that Bruce Wayne is actually just a crazy patient at Arkham Asylum and the entire Arkhamverse was all made up in his mind.
Oh cool. The basic bitch of fan theories. Literally on par with, it was all just a dream, in being lazy theories that add nothing and could apply to any story ever with no change needed to customize the theory. The Great Gatsby was all in Nick's head. The Remains of the Day was just a bad trip where Stevens only thought he was the butler of an English manor. Throbbing Hood, Prince of Beeves, A Tale of Epic Contortions was just a dying delusion in Angelica Sin's mind after she was in a horrible unicycling accident. Even Nerd has to start out acting unimpressed by it.
Yeah, this one's a reach and a half.
My dude, it's your video. You can just leave this theory out. Save yourself the editing. Hell, if you need 10 theories exactly for algorithmic reasons, just use the Scarecrow's face bonus theory as one of them instead. This theory isn't even just low-hanging fruit anymore. That apple fell off the tree to rot on the ground. I am not engaging further with a narrative that explicitly requires denial of the reality we can actually witness for an unfalsifiable claim. I already left the church! Theory 9. Bruce Wayne died during Arkham Knight. But like, not the normal way. Like, he's not physically dead, but he's dead mentally, but not brain dead, but like, some other mentally dead thing.
This one's hard to explain.
No, it's just poorly defined. Quick version. He says the Bruce part of his personality actually died at the end when the Joker personality briefly takes the driver's seat because of the extra fear toxin. And then the Joker personality also dies after that from the extra fear toxin, leaving only the Batman part, but not the Bruce part. For one, the way he explicitly explains it, his explanation hinges on theory number 6 being true, since it has to be fear gas personality Joker dying here instead of actual prion disease Joker that the game presents to us. This one is a stack of cards on top of a different stack of cards which already toppled over. It also requires baffling, unclear definitions of what it means to be human or have personhood.
Batman's human side to him is completely gone, and now he's no longer a person, just a living entity.
I get that these are obviously tricky biological and philosophical questions in real life, but he doesn't even manage to get there. Bruce is obviously still human, and he's obviously still an autonomous and rational agent, so his personhood is also not in question. Are you asking about his soul, perhaps? Is this a claim of soullessness? You're trying to imply some sort of weird mental continuity, one that can die without killing the body, that I can only make sense of as either a soul or a strange postmodern metafictional statement about the characters. But I'm going to go out on a limb to assume the guy making the Batman Arkham Theory clickbait video is not terribly likely to be a postmodernist, and I'll try and work with a soul angle, I guess? I know souls are hotly contested IRL. I myself have not seen compelling evidence for them, but I'm willing to grant that fictional universes can establish whether or not they want souls to exist. In Assassin's Creed, souls do not exist. DC Comics, on the other hand, so commonly show souls existing that I'm willing to accept it as the default state of DC adaptations unless specified otherwise. If this is his question, it still lacks evidence of happening here, but it's so poorly defined I'm having to reach further to try and meet him where he is.
It's not the original Batman, it's Joker's fear of Batman personified that ended up taking over the body.
Ah shit, he did accidentally go postmodern? Alright, forget the souls. If Batman's fear of being Joker in this context is indistinguishable from just being the Joker, thanks to his brain chemistry, then we can just define him as being Joker. There's no distinguishable difference in a weird, perfect Xerox of the ship of Theseus kind of way. Likewise, if Joker's fear of being Batman is indistinguishable from just being Batman, thanks to his brain chemistry, then we can just define him as being Batman in the same way. This Joker had no neurological continuity with the original Joker, so even if Batman somehow lost all neurological continuity with his original self inside of his own brain, which is not established, you are just assuming that Batman fighting back cannot be the real Batman to make your theory work. At the end of the day, he's still just functionally a Batman of the same sort he started as, making this entire thread attempts at distinctions without any meaningful difference. What did we say about fan theories needing to add something of value?
This is really the only explanation as to how—
Stop. Just right there. This is so presumptuous. Asserting that your theory is the only explanation when it's not stated in the game in any way. I sometimes have to fill in the gaps when theorizing when a game does a bad job explaining something. Assassin's Creed Chronicles gets really sloppy with the Helix abilities, so I had to try and make sense of it with existing canon. Even still, I'm not out here declaring that it's my way or the highway. I acknowledge that it is purely my speculation, and will concede these points if the actual source material, or those who write it, ever override that. I'll let him finish the sentence.
This is really the only explanation as to how Batman was able to completely overcome fear.
That's it? You think it's impossible that a man who defined himself after his fears, and has tackled his fears almost nightly for more than a decade, and is routinely shown overcoming fear in his numerous stories and adaptations, and multiple times prior in this very series, just couldn't overcome fear? There's more special pleading and more unclear definitions of what Nerd thinks it means to be human, and then he says this.
Now, if I'm being honest, I don't really believe this theory all that much.
What? You explicitly called it the only explanation, and now you explicitly don't even believe it.
This is really the only explanation. I don't really believe this theory all that much.
From your perspective, as stated here, you explicitly don't believe the only explanation. This went from failing to critically analyze the source material to failing to critically analyze the video itself. Come on, man. Theory 10. Joker actually wanted at the end of Arkham City. Good news, we've calmed back down on the theories for the end. Bad news, I still don't buy it. He does give some detail to try and flesh it out, but I'm more convinced that Joker's no is genuine. And if his plan was to try and make Batman feel responsible, it's again slapping Joker with a mediocre plan. Don't get me wrong, Batman suffers emotionally from the events of Arkham City. But in no way does this undo Batman. Besides, we've already seen a borderline ready-to-die Joker in this series in Arkham Origins, and he only finishes becoming the Joker we know when Batman inexplicably saves his life, wooing Joker into their eternal back and forth. I see no reason the Joker we know now would consider this winning on a technicality. He wants to hit the right buttons and make Batman go full Mortal Kombat on his spinal column. We see it in the very scene. When it seems incorrectly like Batman might just let Joker die on his own, as a technicality instead of the win Joker desires, he takes actions to try and avert that outcome. It's reckless, but that's not enough to go off of to call it deliberate. This theory, again, doesn't add anything. It's just as easy to explain the scene as a desperate man fumbling a desperate Hail Mary attempt because he misunderstood where Batman was going with his monologue. In fact, it again detracts something because it invalidates the last laugh, appreciating that cosmic punchline if he's not being genuine about it. Look, I know some of this sounds harsh. Since I'm willing to dish it out, I think it's only fair to get self-critical here. Why did I bother to take the time and make the efforts to do all of this? It is, after all, just a video. And I do firmly think it was just a video. Worst case, he decided to make a little bit of clickbait to keep his channel active and be able to pay his bills. And best case, he was well-intentioned in trying to share stuff he found interesting and just didn't give it due diligence. Either of these are reasonable motivations. But this video doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's reaching a large audience and influencing the way some of that audience engages with these stories. And recently, there has been an alarmingly visible issue with media literacy, which has been very apparent to me. When you have this large of an audience and this large of an influence on how some of that audience is going to adopt media literacy, thanks to things like being young or engaging with fiction like this for the first time, I think we should consider at least a little of the personal responsibility that comes with that. Like that one famous Spider-Man quote.
He believed that if you could do good things for other people...
No, the good version.
Pizza time.
Fuck it, close enough. Nerd's video is blatantly nowhere even close to the actual dangerous versions of this problem. The worst example I keep currently seeing is how satire of fascism keeps being spun as pro-fascism by people supporting the removal of human rights. This is certainly far worse than anything in the list of bad fan theories I covered here, but it represents the same thing on a massively different scale. The way we engage with stories influences how we develop as people and as critical thinkers. But that's just way too big for Baneshake's Charlie to tackle. I can't do a goddamn thing about that. YouTube typically allows my stuff to get a few hundred views at best. Unless it's Lego Indiana Jones. For some reason that one is the exception I'm still desperately unable to recreate. So all I can do, personally, is just keep engaging with the media around me and trying to do the best I can, seeing where it ends up going. And because of the world we live in, if I did try to engage with the actually dangerous fascist side of this problem, like on the big end, and it somehow did get popular, some of that risk, while still slight, increases, and that's kind of scary. That kind of violence has been rising in the American South, and oh boy, that's where I am. So if I, say, Limited such a spiel to hide at the end of a longer video about comic book characters in a vidya game. The people I'm most concerned about probably got distracted by a squirrel acting too gay outside their window 30 seconds in, and they clicked off since they didn't see their culture war triggers anywhere in the title or intro. And now, the only risk is Nerd coming back, responding to my response, and dishing out such an overwhelming cavalcade of evidence and clarification to prove these theories that I am left devastated, weeping on the floor like Batman just punched me in the dick. If you're new to my channel, first of all, thank you for watching and supporting me here. I don't usually do this kind of thing, but I do always try to engage in depth with the stuff I cover. If you'd be willing to check out my channel, see if I've covered anything within your interests, it would honestly mean the most to me right now. I've been in a minor slump here recently, with the common cycle of depression and anxiety that I'm just treading water on the channel after one massive success failed to turn into anything but an outlier. It certainly didn't help that some plans I had made to try and engage with any possible boosts around Avatar's Netflix show or Godzilla x Kong got thoroughly dashed upon the rocks by a bout of COVID-19, fucking up what I was actually capable of working on in that time. For now, I'm just going to keep my focus on the things I already have a built-in loyal audience for. I'm feeling a little tired and a bit burned out constantly trying to appeal to YouTube's horseshit corporate algorithmic whims. It's been building up for a few months now. As much as I'd love to succeed at higher numbers and new growth, it's clear that at least right now, it's sheer random chance for someone operating at my level, so I'll just keep doing the things I like to do right now and we'll see what happens after that.